Hey folks, this is Kalani. Patch 9.2's release date could be closer than we thought. With how quickly the PTR is progressing and with a few new hints of information, patch 9.2 could hit live servers as early as February. So let's dig a bit deeper, see what snippets of information we can line up, and see if we can narrow down a potential release window. While it's always hard to zoom in on this kind of thing, I think we know for absolute sure that this patch cannot release later than March. In a recent announcement, Blizzard detailed their plans for World of Warcraft esports events for the next year. This includes dates for the 2022 Arena World Championship progression, some information about the upcoming NDI tournaments, as well as the classic arena tournaments. Now, the NDI doesn't really have any solid dates just yet, and the classic stuff isn't really relevant for patch 9.2, but the Arena World Championship gives us a very useful nugget of information. The first round of tournaments for Season 3 will kick off on March 18th. Season 3 of the Shadowlands starts right after patch 9.2 goes live, so if the Season 3 tournaments are starting on March 18th, then Season 3 would have to start before March 18th, which would also mean that patch 9.2 would have to release before that very same date, right? A season also typically starts the week after a patch goes live, and if that holds true for patch 9.2, then it would have to release on March 11th or earlier. Seeing as March 11th is a Friday and the patch will definitely release on a Tuesday, that brings us to March 8th. This is the best guesstimation we can make right now for an absolute latest release date for the patch, given this new information about Season 3 and planned tournament dates. I guess the dev team could start Season 3 tournaments without the rest of the game being in Season 3 of Shadowlands, but that would definitely be a bit weird. So, sometime before March 8th, let's see if we can narrow this down even further. A very useful metric when trying to find a potential release date has always been to check the length of PTR cycles and compare them to what we've seen so far in this PTR cycle. So, patch 9.2 went up onto the public test realms on December 2nd. That means it's been active for 6 weeks already at this point, or 42 days. Let's see how long the patch 9.1 PTR cycle was to give us a relevant point of comparison. Okay, so 9.1 was pushed to the public test realms on April 13th, which is kind of crazy. That was, what, 9 months ago now? That kind of puts the pace of Shadowlands into perspective, really, doesn't it? But anyway, it started on April 13th and the patch was released on June 29th. That means that the PTR was for 11 weeks or 77 days. So if we take a direct comparison, that means we would have 5 weeks left of the patch 9.2 PTR for a total of 11 weeks, just like patch 9.1. If the 9.2 PTR lasts for 11 weeks, that would put the 9.2 release date at around February 17th. That would be a Thursday, so either the Tuesday before, which is February 15th, or the Tuesday after, which is February 22nd. It's worth noting that this PTR cycle had a long holiday break over Christmas and New Year's, so that would be at least 1 week with no significant progress being made. We all need a good break every now and then, so let's add another week on to make it even. That would bring us to March 1st. That's right in line with our earlier guesstimation for just before March 8th. I also don't think that patch 9.2 would progress faster when compared to 9.1 on the PTR due to the scale of the patch and how many new features are being planned. So that's our release window, and I think it is actually very realistic. We could see the patch launch as early as February 15th and as late as March 8th. That's a 3-week window where the patch is almost guaranteed to launch. At this point, I would usually plot out the PTR cycles for every major patch for the last few expansions, especially looking at the 0.2 patches and the last patch of each expansion because those are the most relevant to compare to this upcoming patch. But honestly, Shadowlands has been so different with timelines in general that I think the only super relevant comparison right now is the only other major patch that we've had in this expansion. If we compared things to Legion again, I would probably just get sad that the patch progression has been so much slower when compared to what we've seen in the past. That would give us as little as 5 weeks to wait or up to 8 weeks until 9.2 comes and we get some new content. So can we narrow this down even further? I think we can by looking at the current state of the PTR. How has it progressed so far? What content is there and ready to be tested? What content looks like it's finished and ready to go? And what's missing? Patch 9.2 is going to include quite a few new things. We have a new zone, a new story campaign, several new zone-specific systems, a new Torghast feature, a new legendary effect that can be equipped as a second legendary, a new Mythic Plus affix, the Tazavesh dungeon will be split into 2 and added into the Mythic Keystone pool, a new raid, and of course lots of class and balance tuning changes, among other things. So, how is that all shaping up so far? Well, the Zereth Mortis zone seems to be more or less fleshed out with just a few loot and balance changes needing to be addressed. The new story campaign was enabled for testing very early on, and we have been able to work through the entire thing besides the last chapter, which is probably being reserved for after the raid has been completed, so we probably won't see it on the PTR. The Cypher of the First One system is implemented for the most part, but currency earnings keep changing, reward structures keep changing, and some of the points don't work properly, so this one still needs some testing and iteration. The protoform synthesis feature seems to be enabled for the most part, but probably still needs more testing. The catalyst creation feature is not enabled or implemented right now. This is the one that lets you create your own tier gear, and it's also worth mentioning that the Cosmic Flux currency, which interacts with the system, is not in play yet either. The new Torghast feature has been available for a while and seems good to go. The double legendary stuff was just added into the PTR with a few very large questions that still need to be answered, so that needs more testing time. The Mythic Plus affix still hasn't been made available for testing from what I understand, but the Sepulchre of the First Ones has had quite a lot of testing. That's the new raid, and we're getting close to being done there, I think. All of the bosses have been tested on Heroic, and after this week and next week's planned testing, all bosses will have been tested on Mythic. 7 of the 8 bosses will have been tested on LFR difficulty, and then the raid also opens up for testing on normal difficulty next week. That's about as much testing as we get. It's actually more than what we got for the Sanctum of Domination, if I remember correctly, so after next week the raid testing will probably be wrapped up as well. This is, of course, assuming that the dev team do not plan to test the final 3 bosses, and seeing as we haven't seen any hint of testing for them, I would say that's a very safe assumption, so raid testing is more or less done too. It also looks like class tuning and balancing has at least started, so that's more good news. So with how the PTR looks right now, a release date in a month or so could actually be in the cards. I would think the dev team would want a bit more time to make sure they get things right, and there are still quite a few large systems that haven't even started the testing phase. So I think a later February release date is more likely when compared to the mid-February release date. If I were a betting man, I would put my money on February 22nd or March 1st for the release date. I still think our general window here is very accurate, and the PTR could speed up very quickly now that we're into a new year, and the dev team has had a bit of time to get settled back into the swing of things. So there you have it. Patch 9.2 could release as early as February 15th or as late as March 8th, with my personal opinion being Feb 22nd or March 1st, probably leaning to that Feb 22nd date. When do you think Patch 9.2 will hit live servers? Do you think our general estimations are probably about right, or do you think the patch will launch significantly later or maybe even earlier than these dates? What data or information do you think is the most important when looking at these potential release date windows? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who's subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.